Welcome to Shredder Fanfic. Like, subscribe, and hype video. Join members to gain early access to new videos. The main character, after dying in his previous life, he wakes up inside of high school DxD, and he wakes up as Hades with the record of Ragnarok summoning system. What is he gonna do inside of DxD?
Poseidon looked back. The corruption is in the water. The contract is in the people. Poseidon's grip tightened. You cannot drown a debt, Adam said. Poseidon gave him a flat look. You have not watched me try. Dalla laughed before she could stop herself. Every divine face turned toward her. She went pale. Poseidon looked at her longest. Then unexpectedly he asked, "Why is that amusing?" Dalla swallowed. Because, my lord, half the families around the pool have spent years wishing someone would. Poseidon considered. That was apparently enough. They isolated the siphon instead. Merek brought the debt records down in sealed cases. Hades read names, while Poseidon held the currents still. Each contract thread corresponded to a person or household that had once accepted emergency mana during the drought generations earlier. Some obligations were legitimate. Most had been paid already. The siphon did not care. It was collecting from names, not accounts. The water remembers the old contract, Hades said. Poseidon looked offended on behalf of water. Then it has been badly instructed. He lowered the trident into the pool. Not a strike. A command. The water separated around every thread. For the first time, the contract lines became visible without the current covering them. Adam whistled. Poseidon pretended not to hear. Hades walked along the exposed channel and severed only the lines linked to completed debts. Merek marked each cut against the ledger. Dalla verified which homes had already paid. 3 threads remained. The legitimate obligations. Poseidon looked at them. These survive. Until the people who owe them renegotiate. Why? Because they agreed. Poseidon's expression made clear what he thought of agreements weaker people made while desperate. Hades understood. So did I, he said. Poseidon looked at him. When I accepted this territory, I accepted its lawful obligations. Strength does not erase a promise merely because the promise is inconvenient. Poseidon studied the 3 threads. Then why did you cut the others? Because payment ended them. Someone simply preferred the water not to notice. That answer satisfied him. Barely. The 3rd siphon was easier. The 4th attacked. A fallen-like construct rose from the water in the shape of a winged serpent and drove a spear toward Dalla. Poseidon moved before Hades. The trident crossed the tunnel. The serpent vanished in 3 clean pieces. Dalla stared. Poseidon recovered the weapon. You were standing badly. Thank you. Do not. Adam began laughing. Poseidon looked ready to kill him. Hades continued the inspection. By sunset, 4 active siphons were gone. 1 remained. It sat beneath the oldest terrace, where the current fed the children's ward, the western homes, and the estate's main defensive reservoir. Destroying it carelessly would cut all 3. Poseidon stood over the channel. Tomorrow. Hades nodded. The workers looked surprised. The sea god had been inside the water since dawn. Tomorrow, Dalla asked. Poseidon turned. You require sleep. She blinked. So do you, Adam said. Poseidon ignored him. They climbed out of the tunnels. On the upper terrace, workers had prepared food. Poseidon stopped the sight of a long table. No. Hades looked at him. I will eat in my room. Adam took a plate. You do not know where the kitchen is. Poseidon did know. He still followed them to the table. The meal was awkward for 10 minutes. Then a child from one of the western houses approached Poseidon, carrying a cup of water. My mother says you fixed our pump. Poseidon looked at the cup. I corrected the flow. The child held it out. Poseidon took it. The entire table pretended not to watch. He drank. The child smiled and ran back to her family. Adam leaned toward Hades. Do not. Adam's mouth was already open. Hades repeated, do not. Adam closed it. Poseidon set the cup down. His expression remained severe. But when the workers began discussing the final siphon, he moved his chair closer to Dalla's map. Not much. Enough. Chapter 27, Brothers Under One Roof. The breakfast argument began over seating. Poseidon considered the chair at Hades' right is by blood. Adam had occupied it since the shrine because morning light reached the fruit bowl there. Move, Poseidon said. Adam bit into an apple. No. Hades continued reading the transfer ledger. There are 12 chairs. There is one place beside my brother. Adam pushed the fruit bowl toward the empty chair on Hades' left. Now there are 2. Poseidon's grip tightened on his trident. A servant backed toward the door. Hades closed the ledger. If either of you breaks my dining room, you will repair it by hand. Silence followed. Poseidon sat on the left. The meal resumed. Adam complained that the estate's orchard needed pruning. Poseidon called the trees undisciplined. Before noon, the 2 of them were outside arguing over branches while workers watched from a safe distance. Hades returned to his maps with the window open. Their voices carried into the study, irritating and alive. The orchard argument became a public event by accident. Adam had climbed the oldest apple tree because Poseidon had declared its upper branches inefficient. Poseidon stood below with his trident planted in the soil, and the expression of a god being personally insulted by botany. You are cutting too much, Adam said. The branch is croaked. It has apples. It is croaked. Those facts can coexist. 3 workers stopped pruning nearby trees. A 4th found an urgent reason to carry an empty basket through the same path twice. Hades watched from the terrace with the transfer ledger in hand. Poseidon pointed at a branch. That one crosses the growth line. Adam took an apple from it. That one crosses breakfast. Poseidon's aura dropped the temperature. The apple tree did not care. Hades closed the ledger. Neither of you understands orchards. Both men turned. Adam said, I understand apples. Poseidon said, I understand structure. A woman on the ladder, beside the next tree, cleared her throat. All 3 looked at her. She was one of the estate workers, middle-aged, sun-darkened, carrying pruning shears that looked older than most of the noble contracts in the archive. My lords, Hades said, your name. Mara. Which of them is correct? Mara looked as though she had been asked to choose which avalanche should hit her house. Then she looked at the tree. Neither. Adam climbed down. Poseidon went completely still. Mara pointed at the crooked branch. It bends because the old wall blocked morning light for 12 years. If you cut it now, the tree puts too much growth into the west side and splits under fruit weight next season. Poseidon looked at the wall. Adam grinned. Structure. Poseidon ignored him. Mara pointed at Adam's branch. That one has fruit because nobody pruned it last year. Too much fruit. Half will stay small. We thin it. Adam looked betrayed. That sounds wasteful. It is how you keep the tree alive. Hades watched the two most dangerous men in the orchard absorb agricultural defeat from a woman with pruning shears. "Show them," he said. Mara stared. "Both. Especially both." For the next hour, Adam carried baskets and Poseidon held branches steady while Mara explained how to cut dead wood without opening the trunk to rot. Poseidon asked more questions than Adam expected. Adam ate 3 apples Mara had specifically placed in the discard pile. The workers slowly stopped watching. That was when the argument became useful. A young laborer named Sen approached Hades with a boundary map. "My lord, the northern orchard marker moved." Hades looked toward the slope. "How?" "We thought weather, then we found this." Sen handed him a thin square of black metal. A family seal had been scraped off. Poseidon appeared beside him, without anyone seeing him cross the distance. "Aurea." "No," Hades said. Poseidon looked offended. "The shape is Aurea. The metal is not." Adam came over with a basket. He sniffed the plate. "Oil." Mara took it from him before either god objected. "Cart axle grease." Sen nodded. "The market road uses the same." The boundary marker had been moved from the road, not the estate. Hades walked the line. The original stone stood 30 paces downhill from the current one. Someone had shifted the border, so the orchard's northern row appeared outside the transferred territory. Kaito arrived while they were measuring. He saw the second marker and swore. "My father." "Evidence first," Hades said. Kaito glared at him. "Do you practice saying that?" "Frequently." The old Aurea guards had been using the moved marker to demand fees from workers pruning the northern trees. Not much. A few coins, small enough that no one thought the new king needed to know. Hades thought otherwise. He called the captain. The man arrived with 2 guards and a legal argument already prepared. The northern trees are ancestral estate property. Hades pointed at the original marker. The transferred deed says otherwise. The marker was relocated by authorized maintenance. "Show me the authorization." The captain had none. He looked toward Kaito. Kaito's face tightened. For 1 second, Hades could see the old instinct in him. Defend the family publicly, correct it privately, preserve the appearance of authority. Then Kaito said, "Return the fees." The captain froze. "My lord, every coin. House Aurea does not own this road anymore." Kaito glanced at Hades. "Apparently, I am learning. Slowly. Do not ruin it." Adam laughed. Poseidon did not. He was staring at the moved stone. "This marker can be moved again." Mara, still holding her shears, said, "Then put roots around it." Poseidon looked at her. She pointed to the orchard. "Plant a tree on each side. Anyone moves the marker, everyone sees the roots torn up." Poseidon considered. "Acceptable." Hades looked at Merak. The steward had arrived halfway through the dispute and was already writing. "Add it." The new boundary was reset before sunset. "Not with a larger ward. With 2 young apple trees." Mara chose the variety. Adam argued for sweeter fruit. Poseidon argued for stronger roots. Mara ignored both and chose one of each. The first tree went into the ground on Hades' side of the marker. The second went on the road side. Workers packed soil around the roots. Kaito watched. "You are using fruit to define territory." Hades looked at the saplings. "No, people will use the fruit. The roots are evidence." Kaito shook his head. "This house is strange." Adam offered him an apple. You are here often enough to get used to it. Kaito almost refused. Then he took it. At dinner, Poseidon chose the left chair without arguing. Adam noticed. He did not mention it. The fruit bowl remained in the center. Chapter 28, The Mana Pool Territory. The oldest siphon ended beneath a ruined chapel outside the estate boundary. The pool owes us 1/10 of its yield, the officer said. Hades held up the contract chain they had recovered. Your agreement was concealed from the rating game authority and fed with holy poison. It is void. Light spears formed overhead. Poseidon crossed the chapel before the first fell. His trident shattered weapon after weapon, each movement spare and lethal. Adam copied the fallen officer's light compression and used it to cage the wings of 2 attackers. Hades broke the contract altar, severing the final channel to the pool. The officer escaped through a portal, leaving a threat from Cockabeel's faction behind him. Enough power for barriers around the whole valley, she said. Hades watched workers relight homes abandoned under House Auria's decline. Homes first, laboratories after, weapons last. Fallen angels emerged between the pillars. Their leader carried the compact's original seal. The pool owes us 1/10 of its yield, he said. Hades held up the chain recovered from the rating game. Your agreement was concealed and fed with holy poison. It is void under the authority that transferred this land. Authority is a devil word for theft. The officer opened a portal. Hades crossed the chapel in one step and caught the seal before it could follow. You will testify, Hades said. The officer laughed and cut his own palm. The portal collapsed inward, dragging him through. Only a fragment of his crest remained. Enough power for barriers around the entire valley, she said. Hades looked at the workers waiting for his decision. Homes first. Repair the infirmary, then the roads. The laboratory receives what remains after the winter stores are secure. The officer named Cockabeel's faction. Then the next attack will come with a larger claim, Hades said. He placed the surviving crest fragment in a sealed box. The valley had gained clean water and a new enemy in the same afternoon. Both would require maintenance. The surviving crest fragment reacted to moonlight. Beelzebub was not yet part of the household, so the discovery belonged to Merrick, who had left the sealed box beside a window while he searched for a safer shelf. At midnight, the fragment began to glow. Oren raised the alarm. Hades arrived first. Poseidon came through the wall of water in the nearest pipe rather than using the door. Adam arrived carrying one shoe. Merrick stared at him. I was asleep. You found time for one shoe. I made a choice. The crest pulsed again. A thin projection spread across the inside of the glass, a route map. Not of the mana pool. Of the shrine. Hades went still. The fragment had been recording the estate's current layout through sympathetic marks hidden in the old siphon network. Every active conduit had doubled as a sensor. Whoever controlled the compact could see which gates opened, which channels carried mana, and which buildings drew the most power. Poseidon's expression became murderous. They have watched my water. Adam put on his second shoe. That seems to be the part that offended him. Hades ignored both. How long? Merrick checked the transfer records. The oldest siphon predates House Auria's current layout by more than a century, but these lines are recent. The map showed the new laboratory allocation. The repaired western pumps. The workers' housing. The shrine's kitchen. Hades' hand tightened around the bident. The last line bothered him most. Not because it was strategically important. Because it was ordinary. Someone had watched where his household ate. Can we feed false information into it? Adam asked. Poseidon looked at him. Why would we permit it to remain? Because if someone is watching, we can choose what they see. Poseidon disliked the idea visibly. Hades said, "We use it once." They moved the box to the map room. Merek drew a false relocation plan showing the mana pool's defensive reserve being transferred to the southern warehouse. Orange scheduled an obvious conv. Workers loaded empty crates with enough warding metal to make the deception feel expensive. Poseidon stood beside the route marker. "This is childish." "Yes," Adam said. "Then why does it work?" "Because arrogant people think deception is something only they understand." Poseidon gave him a long look. At dawn, the crest fragment flashed. Someone had accessed the feed. Hades waited. The attack came 3 hours later. Not at the southern warehouse. At the northern road. A fallen portal opened behind the workers' conv. Route, precisely where an enemy would stand to intercept reinforcements supposedly moving south. They did not believe the whole map, Hades said. Adam smiled. Better. The attackers were professionals this time. 8 fallen soldiers emerged in 2 groups, angelic spears already formed. Their leader wore a half-mask and carried no visible crest. Poseidon stepped into the road. The first spear never reached him. Water rose from the drainage ditch in a thin vertical sheet. The holy weapon struck, hissed, and lost enough force for Poseidon to redirect it into the ground. Adam moved toward the workers. Hades moved toward the portal. That division confused the attackers. They had prepared for all 3 divine fighters to charge the obvious threat. Instead, Adam evacuated the conv. Poseidon controlled the road, and Hades examined the portal anchors while the battle continued around him. The leader noticed. "Stop the king." 3 soldiers broke formation. Hades looked up. Now. Poseidon moved. The road became sea. Not enough to drown anyone. Enough to remove footing. The 3 soldiers lost balance. Adam returned from the convoy and crossed the flooded ground without slowing. He caught one spear, copied the reinforcement behind the thrust, and snapped the shaft against his knee. Hades reached the first anchor. The sigil was keyed to the same compact as the mana pool. He did not destroy it. He turned it. The portal widened. The attacker's retreat route became a window. For 1 second, Hades saw the place on the other side. A stone chamber. White banners. A man in a dark coat standing beside a projection of the shrine. The man saw Hades. Their eyes met. He cut the connection. The portal collapsed. The fallen leader swore. Poseidon's trident stopped at his throat. "Name." The leader smiled through blood. "No." Poseidon pressed closer. Hades said, "Alive." "You continue ruining simple solutions." "Frequently." The captured soldiers carried no identifying marks, but one had a supply tag sewn into his sleeve. Merek recognized the number. The charity-backed guild. Again. The enemy had changed soldiers, methods, and routes. The logistics remained. Hades found that reassuring. Organizations could hide names. They could not operate without moving food, weapons, records, and people. The prisoners were transferred to neutral custody. The crest fragment stopped glowing after the failed attack. "They know we know," Adam said. "Yes. Destroy it." Hades looked at Poseidon. The sea god had already raised his trident. "Yes." Poseidon smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. He drove the weapon down. The fragment shattered inside the glass. Every remaining sympathetic sensor in the territory went dark at once. Across the valley, workers reported brief flashes from pipes, gate stones, and old pump seals. The hidden network died in pieces. Merek began recording each location. Hades looked at the growing list. The enemy had just shown them where every surviving sensor had been. Adam noticed the same thing. They gave us a map. Yes. Poseidon lifted his trident from the ruined box. You are both smiling. Adam said, we enjoy information. Poseidon looked toward the broken glass. I enjoy simpler things. That afternoon, he personally destroyed the remaining sensor marks, one by one. Hades let him. Chapter 29, The Patriarch's Crown. House Auria's patriarch came to negotiate with 40 guards. Hades received him at a plain table overlooking the Mana pool. Adam sat by the window. Poseidon remained on the terrace, visible enough to make every guard reconsider violence. Return the ancestral residence, the patriarch demanded. Keep the water rights and rankings. The families living there would become your leverage. They are my subjects. They were entries in your debt ledger. Hades slid forward the records recovered from the siphons. You permitted foreign claims to consume their wards. I will not return them. The patriarch read the first page and aged visibly. Hades offered a narrower agreement. House Auria could retain its cemetery, archives, and private wing. In return, it would recognize the transfer, release the workers from inherited debts, and testify about the fallen compact. You leave me a graveyard, the patriarch said. I leave you a name. Decide what you build behind it. He signed. Father, Kaito said, I sign the wager. The transfer stands. The patriarch stared at him. You lost my house. I lost the resource I claimed to control. That is different. Hades looked at Kaito, then offered the patriarch a narrower agreement. Recognition of the transfer, release of inherited worker debts, testimony about the fallen compact, and protected access to the Auria cemetery. The old lord signed. It was not forgiveness. It was the first legal act House Auria had made without pretending the past was an asset. As they left, Kaito paused. My father will try to recover the pool another way. Then next time, he will arrive without the benefit of surprise. The patriarch did not leave after signing. He stood on the terrace, while his guards waited below and watched workers move along the water channels that had once answered to his seal. Kaito stayed too. Neither father nor son spoke. Hades let the silence belong to them. It was Dalla who broke it. She approached, carrying a folder. The patriarch saw her and stiffened. You. Dalla stopped. Hades looked between them. You know each other. The patriarch's mouth flattened. Dalla answered. I petitioned him 7 years ago. For what? The western pumps. Kaito went still. His father looked toward the pool. The request was denied. Dalla's voice remained level. The request disappeared. Kaito turned to him. You told me the pumps were under review. They were. For 7 years. The patriarch finally looked at his son. You think governance is a sequence of clean choices. We had creditors, marriage contracts, 3 rival houses pressing the eastern border. The pumps served 32 homes. Dalla said 38. He looked at her. 6 families moved in while you were not counting. The patriarch's face hardened. Hades watched Kaito absorb that. The old man continued. I chose the stability of the house. Dalla held out the folder. And the house chose to bill us for water we did not receive. He did not take it. Kaito did. Inside were copies of every petition, every return notice, every maintenance fee, every complaint filed under a different clerk because the previous one had stopped answering. Kaito, read. The patriarch said, "You are humiliating your own blood in front of strangers." Kaito did not look up. You did not seem concerned about humiliation when the workers were strangers. That line ended something. Not the relationship. Something easier. The patriarch's certainty that Kaito would always return to the family's side of the table. Hades stepped in only when the silence had become useful enough. The cemetery remains yours. The patriarch looked at him. The archive wing remains yours. The private residence remains yours. The debts tied to false water delivery do not. You think you can separate a house from its obligations? No, I think obligations are the only part worth separating carefully. Dalla placed another paper on the table. These are the names of the families still carrying the water debt. The patriarch finally took it. 38 households. Kaito watched him read. The old man sat down. For the first time since arriving, he looked old rather than powerful. I signed most of these yearly summaries. Yes, Dalla said. I did not read the individual accounts. I know. He looked at her. There was no triumph in her face. That made the moment worse. What do you want? Dalla answered immediately. Water. The patriarch blinked. Not revenge. Revenge does not fill a basin. Kaito closed his eyes. Hades almost heard the phrase, fitting itself into his memory. The patriarch looked toward the western terrace. How much? Dalla gave him the number. Not astronomical. Not ruinous. Smaller than the annual cost of maintaining House Auria's private arena box. His face changed. He knew that too. Kaito said, "Use the cemetery trust." The patriarch turned sharply. That fund is protected. It has more than enough. It preserves the family dead. Kaito looked at Dalla. The living carried water by hand, while we protected marble. His father stood. You do not control that trust. No. Kaito looked at Hades. The new territorial authority did. Everyone understood. Hades said, I will not seize a cemetery fund to repair civil infrastructure. Kaito stared. The patriarch almost smiled. Then Hades continued. House Auria will choose whether to contribute voluntarily. If it refuses, the new territorial budget will repair the pumps, and the refusal will be attached to the public transfer record. The patriarch's smile vanished. Kaito laughed. It was brief and ugly. That is cruel. No, Hades said. It is readable. The old lord looked at the paper. He could keep the money. He could also keep the record, showing that he had chosen tombs over households after the cost became impossible to pretend he had not seen. Dalla waited. The patriarch took the pen. Half. Kaito looked at him. The trust pays half. My private estate account pays the rest. Dalla said, the repair crew chooses the contractor. He looked offended. Hades said nothing. The patriarch finally nodded. Fine. Dalla signed as witness. No one applauded. She left to tell the pump crews. Kaito watched her go. You gave him away to keep dignity. Hades looked at the patriarch. No, he found a way to spend it. The old man did not answer. That evening, the first repair carts rolled toward the western terrace. House Auria's old crest was still painted on 2 of them. Hades did not order it removed. The workers would repaint the wagons when they decided what belonged there. Kaito remained at the pool until after dark. His father had returned to the private wing. Adam joined Kaito on the terrace and handed him an apple. Kaito took it without argument now. "That is becoming concerning," Adam said. "What? You accepted fruit. I lost a kingdom this week. I have broader tolerances." Adam looked toward the repair lights. "You did not lose all of it." Kaito's expression tightened. "Do not comfort me. I was not." "Good." They stood in silence. Eventually, Kaito said, "Do you think Hades would have taken the cemetery money?" "If he needed to." "Yes." Adam considered. "No." Kaito looked surprised. "He would have made you decide whether to offer it." "That is worse." "Usually." Kaito bit into the apple. Below them, the western pumps were opened for the first time in years. The work crews found corrosion worse than expected. Dalla swore loudly enough for the terrace to hear. Adam smiled. Kaito did too. Very slightly. Chapter 30, Top 50, Beelzebub. Hades entered the top 50 by defeating a veteran king whose labyrinth turned strength against itself. He won by refusing the center path. Poseidon cut water channels through the maze, while Adam mapped reflected spells, and Hades struck the control crest from beneath. The victory display rose above the arena. Rank threshold crossed, top 50. Reward unlocked, Beelzebub. Darkness gathered in the estate's empty workshop. A slender man emerged carrying a skull-topped staff, his expression hollow and wary. The mana pool's light recoiled from him. "Hades," Beelzebub said, "why bring me here?" "Because this world uses crests, curses, sacred gears, and fallen light we do not yet understand." Hades indicated the sealed fragments recovered from the siphons. "I need a mind willing to learn them." Beelzebub touched the glass around a light spear fragment. It vibrated beneath his fingers. "And if what I learn destroys your estate, then you will build safeguards before experiments." Adam offered him a bishop piece. "There are people living above this room." Beelzebub looked from Adam to Poseidon, then back to Hades. "You trust me among your family." "Trust is built. The place to begin building it is here." Beelzebub accepted. Crimson light settled into the bishop piece, and the workshop wards screamed before stabilizing. Beelzebub did not ask for comfort after the summoning. He asked for containment glass, 9 categories of blood sample, and permission to dismantle a recovered fallen light spear. Hades denied the third request until the first 2 were safely labeled. The denial made Beelzebub study him more closely than approval would have. Beelzebub said, "You summon me for dangerous knowledge, and then slow my hand." Hades said, "I summoned you for knowledge useful to a house that intends to remain alive." Adam set a plate of food near the door. Poseidon looked at the plate, then at Beelzebub, and decided not to ask whether the researcher ate like a normal person. That restraint was the closest thing to welcome he had available. The first laboratory rule was written before the first experiment. No test outranked the lives above it. Beelzebub signed without emotion, but he read the sentence twice. By morning, one wall held diagrams of devil crests, sacred gear resonance, fallen light, anti-divine contracts, and the mana pool's current structure. Hades saw not a room of tools, but a future battlefield being made honest before enemies reached it. A stranger tried to use the reputation of top 50, Beelzebub, as a password. Beelzebub finds the black table humming after midnight. Hades watches him choose to wake the researchers instead of investigating alone. Merek disagreed with the proposed fix. Instead of choosing between them, Hades required a test that could fail in front of everyone. The first attempt failed loudly enough to make the servants leave the doorway. At the pressure testing chamber, a researcher discovered that the safest counter also erased useful evidence. Hades found a coil of Beelzebub's wire on the floor and did not allow anyone to move it until the people who had touched it were named. Beelzebub stood near the doorway, listening to the answers instead of supplying one. "You can decide this in a minute," Beelzebub said. Chapter 31. The First Laboratory. Beelzebub's first experiment began with a black table, a curse, and a rule that no one was permitted to touch the table. Adam arrived with soup, while Beelzebub drew 6 circles in his own blood. "You are eating before you continue," Adam said. "I am observing the curse. The curse can observe you while you eat." Hades entered before Beelzebub could answer. He inspected the laboratory's 3 chambers, cursed material below, sacred gear samples behind isolated glass, and fallen light in a room whose door opened toward the evacuation tunnel. The first test revealed why the siphon curse had survived House Auria's repairs. It responded to devil crests, not to mana itself. Hades' divine aura had disrupted it because he was outside the system the curse had been built to consume. "It changes according to the observer," Beelzebub said. "Then stop observing from the same place," Hades replied. He moved the workers behind the glass and made Beelzebub repeat the test with 3 distances, 2 crest strengths, and a passive barrier. By midnight, the curse had not been defeated, but its response had become measurable. Beelzebub wiped blood from his hand. "You turned a discovery into a schedule. A schedule keeps discovery from deciding who pays for it." Adam left the soup beside the black table. Beelzebub ignored it for another minute, then ate while reading the results. The laboratory remained frightening. It was also now attached to rules that could outlive its first owner. The black table hummed at 2 in the morning. Beelzebub heard it first. He had been asleep for 23 minutes, which Adam considered a victory and Beelzebub considered an accounting error. The hum traveled through the floor, up the laboratory wall, and into the metal frame of his bed. He was standing before he was fully awake. The sample chamber glowed violet. The fallen light fragment inside the innermost case had begun responding to a name written on the ward. Beelzebub leaned closer. The name was his. He reached for the containment latch, then stopped. Hades had written the first laboratory rule above the door. No test outranks the lives above it. Beelzebub stared at the sentence. He hated that it had become inconvenient. He woke the researchers. The youngest arrived first, hair unbound, 1 boot missing. "What happened?" "The sample changed." "Did you touch it?" "No." She looked shocked enough to be offensive. Beelzebub ignored her. Within minutes the room filled. Evacuation wards activated. Merek appeared in a robe over his nightclothes with a ledger under one arm. Adam arrived carrying soup. "Why soup? You skipped dinner. This is a containment event. You skipped dinner during that too." Hades came last because he had stopped to check that the upper floors were being cleared. He looked through the glass. The holy fragment pulsed each time Beelzebub stepped closer. "Move away." Beelzebub did. The pulse weakened. Adam approached. "Nothing." Poseidon stood at the threshold. "Nothing." Hades approached. A faint response. "Names," Beelzebub said. "It is reacting to identity associations." "Or threat expectation," Hades replied. Beelzebub looked at him. "Explain." The fragment was recovered from a fallen attack. It may not know names. It may know what the person holding it feared. The researcher with 1 boot raised a hand. "Then why you?" Beelzebub looked at the black table. The original experiment had involved blood, cursed resonance, and a line of research notes describing Beelzebub as the most likely person to dismantle the fragment. The sample had been surrounded by expectation. It might have learned from the observers. "Empty the room," Hades said. Beelzebub bristled. "We need measurements. We take them remotely. The response changes with distance. Then the room can be the distance." Tesla had not joined them yet. They lacked the elegant instruments that would later make remote testing easy, so they improvised. Merek found 3 observation crystals. The workers built a mechanical arm from a kitchen pulley, 2 ward rods, and a handle borrowed from the east gate. Adam insisted the soup remain. Beelzebub protested. No one cared. They repeated the experiment, with the room empty. The fragment did not move. They wrote Beelzebub's name on a blank card and pushed it toward the case with the mechanical arm. Nothing. They placed his blood sample beside it. A slight pulse. They placed the original research note beside the blood. The fragment lit violently. The pattern became clear. It was not responding to Beelzebub. It was responding to a recorded intention to destroy it. Beelzebub stared through the glass. "It reads hostility." "Crude version," Hades said. "Not crude." Beelzebub's eyes sharpened. "Adaptive." The implication changed the laboratory. A weapon that reacted to hostility could be used to identify attackers. It could also become stronger around frightened defenders. Adam understood first. So if we put this in a hospital, it could classify the healer as a threat if the healer hates what it did, Beelzebub said. Hades nodded. Which means we do not build a defense around it. Beelzebub turned. We can. No. We can isolate the response threshold. Later. We have the sample active now. Later. The word became a wall. Beelzebub's grip tightened around his staff. You summoned me because you wanted answers. I summoned you because I wanted someone capable of finding them. Then let me work. I am. You are stopping the experiment. I am stopping this version. For a second, the old darkness in Beelzebub's expression returned. The part of him that had spent too long believing discovery justified whatever was left afterward. Adam set the soup beside him. Beelzebub looked at the bowl. Then at Adam. I could kill you. Adam smiled. You could try after eating. The researcher with one boot covered a laugh. Beelzebub did not kill anyone. They ended the test. The fragment remained sealed. At breakfast, Hades required every researcher to explain one thing they had learned and one thing they still did not know. Beelzebub hated the exercise. He participated anyway. The sample responds to encoded hostile intention, he said. We do not know whether the response is intrinsic to angelic material added by the fallen compact or learned from repeated exposure. The one boot researcher said, we learned the evacuation route is too narrow if everyone brings equipment. Merek wrote that down. Adam said, we learned Beelzebub can wake people instead of doing something stupid alone. Beelzebub stared at him. Hades said, record it. Merek did. Beelzebub looked personally betrayed. Later, when the laboratory emptied, he stood alone beneath the rule above the door. No test outranks the lives above it. He added a second line beneath it in smaller handwriting. No result is invalidated by waiting long enough to understand the cost. Hades found it that evening. He did not comment. He simply left the sentence where it was. That annoyed Beelzebub almost as much as praise would have. Chapter 32. Counters for Fallen Light. The counter-sigil failed during its first field test. The counter-sigil failed in front of 6 engineers. It absorbed a thread of captured light, glowed white, and detonated hard enough to lift the testing platform. Hades caught the falling beam with one hand. Adam dragged two engineers behind the grounding wall. Beelzebub stood in the crater, staring at the broken circles. The conversion rate changes when fear spikes, he said. Then include fear in the test, Hades replied. The second sigil held. Adam's palm burned. Again, Beelzebub said. Adam looked at Hades, not the researcher. Hades shook his head. We changed the insulation before another attempt. Beelzebub's staff tapped the floor. The injury is data. The injury is a cost. Data is what we learn after refusing to pay it twice. Beelzebub's thin smile appeared and vanished. Issue it to the patrols, Hades said. The authority receives the complete diagram. You would give away the counter. That evening, a messenger from heaven arrived for the diagrams. Beelzebub wanted to refuse. Hades sent a copy with the testing conditions, including every failure. Adam looked at the sealed package. You are letting rivals learn from the mistakes. I am making it harder for them to call our defense a secret weapon. You are going to read that report until it becomes a wall, Beelzebub said. The second counter-sigil did not explode. That made everyone more nervous. It sat inside the testing circle as a thin pattern of black and silver lines, absorbing a captured thread of fallen light without heat, noise, or visible strain. Beelzebub watched the gauges. Adam flexed the burned hand from the previous test. Hades watched Adam. Stop looking at me, Adam said. I am looking at the injury. It is attached to me. Unfortunate. Adam smiled. The sigil held for 30 seconds. Then a worker outside the circle shouted. The light changed direction. Not toward the worker. Toward Adam. Beelzebub struck the emergency seal. The counter collapsed. A white arc crossed the room. Hades moved. The bident caught the arc and drove it into the grounding wall. Stone vaporized in a clean line. Silence. Beelzebub looked at the readings. The fear response again. Adam shook his burned hand. Whose? Beelzebub checked the sequence. The worker had shouted because a pressure gauge slipped. Adam had turned toward him. The sigil interpreted Adam's protective movement as a threat to the captured light. Hades looked at the pattern on the floor. So the counter is not neutralizing the weapon. It is teaching the weapon how we respond. Beelzebub sounded, offended by the discovery. Destroy it, Adam said. No. Hades and Beelzebub spoke together. They looked at each other. Adam sighed. Of course. Hades said, we do not issue it. Beelzebub nodded reluctantly. But we keep the failure. The engineers began photographing the damaged lines. One of them, a young devil named Rel, approached the edge of the circle. My lord. Hades looked over. If the weapon reacts to protection, could the protection happen somewhere else? Beelzebub turned. Explain. Rel swallowed. Do not put the counter on the person being attacked. Put it on the room. The laboratory went quiet. Rel continued, faster now. If the sigil does not belong to one defender, it cannot read one defender's intention as easily. The room catches the light before anyone decides who is protecting whom. Beelzebub crossed the distance in 2 steps. Rel flinched. The scientist grabbed his notebook. Draw it. Rel did. The third design abandoned the bracer entirely. They built the counter into 4 wall anchors and 1 ceiling plate. The protected person stood in the center without touching any part of the system. The sigil responded to incoming holy energy by dispersing it through the room's structure rather than opposing it at a single point. The first test failed. The north wall cracked. The second test failed differently. The ceiling anchor overheated. The third held. Adam stood in the center while the captured light struck. The room glowed. The energy dispersed. Nothing burned. No one cheered. Beelzebub looked at Hades. Again. Hades looked at the workers. Do we know why it held? Rel said, mostly. Then no. Beelzebub closed his eyes. Adam laughed. They dismantled the test and inspected every anchor. The ceiling plate had nearly failed. A fourth attempt would have broken it. Beelzebub saw the fracture. He did not argue. That mattered. The next morning, Michael's messenger arrived for the countermeasure diagrams. She was tall, white-winged, and visibly uncomfortable standing beneath a devil roof. Her name was Leora. She looked at the cracked laboratory wall. You expect heaven to trust a device built from fallen light experiments. No, Hades said. She blinked. I expect you to inspect it. Beelzebub placed the complete test file on the table. Not the successful design. Everything. The explosion. Adam's burn. The fear response failure. The cracked wall. Rel's room-based revision. Leora read in silence. You are giving us the failures. Especially those. Why? Beelzebub answered before Hades. Because if you repeat them after reading this, the stupidity becomes yours. Leora looked at him. Adam coughed into his hand to hide a laugh. She turned to Hades. Do you agree with that wording? No. Beelzebub looked offended. I agree with the principle. Leora read the final page. The device is weaker than a direct anti-light barrier. Yes. It requires architecture. Yes. It cannot be worn into battle. Not this version. Then why share it? Hades pointed toward the worker housing above the laboratory. Because buildings are where people sleep. That stopped her. She had expected a weapon. He had given her a shelter design. Leora closed the file. Michael will ask whether you intend to use this against heaven. If heaven attacks my people, yes. No diplomacy. No softening. She nodded. Fair. Beelzebub watched her seal the documents. Your faction will improve it. Probably. Send the revisions. Leora looked surprised. You expect cooperation. I expect data. Adam leaned toward her. That is his version of friendship. It is not, Beelzebub said. Leora almost smiled. Before leaving, she looked at Rel. You designed the room. Rel froze. Partly. Put your name on the diagram. He looked at Hades. Hades said nothing. Rel picked up the pen. For most of his life, noble research had passed upward until worker names disappeared beneath a family crest. He wrote his own name beneath the design. Leora watched, then added hers beside it as receiving witness. The document left the estate, carrying both. Beelzebub stood at the door after the angel vanished. You realize she will improve it. Good. Then heaven will possess a better defense against fallen light than we do. Then we will learn from their revision. Beelzebub stared. You are very irritating. Adam handed him soup. Family trait. This time Beelzebub ate it before it went cold. Chapter 33. The fifth straight victory. 5 top 50 victories brought Hades to the threshold of 25. The Phoenix King rebuilt retired pieces faster than the judges could count them. Hades changed the match before the audience understood what he was doing. Poseidon controlled the escape routes. Adam drew the enemy knights away from the healing pylons. Hades struck the supply structures instead of the fighters. The Phoenix King met him above the last pylon, wings blazing. Hades drove the bident through the pylon. Stored fire rushed upward. The Phoenix King turned to contain the blast and protect his own spectators. Hades struck his crest during that necessary distraction. The referee called the match. In the medical hall, Hades returned the captured fire core to the Phoenix heir. Why? The heir asked. Back at the estate, Adam found Hades reviewing the next challenges instead of celebrating. Beelzebub entered carrying a diagram of the laboratory's new counter-sigil and paused when he saw the Phoenix core on the table. You returned a useful source of heat, he said. We have the mana pool. They have families who need theirs. Beelzebub examined the core. It will stabilize the fourth design for 3 days. Then ask whether they will lend it. Adam picked up the match record. The Phoenix King said the next opponent uses an anti-divine contract. Then the counter must be tested against a contract, not a spear. The household moved into the laboratory. Beelzebub set the fire core inside a new cage. Adam took the safe position beside the door. Hades read the legal limits on borrowed magical material, while the ranking display placed him at 26. One sanctioned victory remained before the top 25. No one in the room called it inevitable. The fire core pulsed behind its glass, reminding them that every future battle would arrive with a different question. The hearing in the shrine's upper bridge had 12 chairs and only 11 people. The missing chair belonged to the worker whose name had been removed from the first account after a ranking official tried to place Hades's faction in a category it had outgrown. Hades placed a summons seal on the empty seat. The gesture angered the oldest delegate, who demanded that a symbol not be mistaken for evidence. The Phoenix heir returned for the fire core before sunset. He did not come with guards. That was the first thing Hades noticed. The second was the bandage around his right hand. You were burned after the match. The heir looked at the wrapped palm. The core remembers its owner. Beelzebub stopped writing. That is not how stored Phoenix fire should behave. The heir's expression tightened. It has been in my family longer than our current reincarnation system. We call that explanation enough. Your family is wrong. Adam leaned against the laboratory door. You do enjoy introductions. The heir ignored him. Hades placed the fire core on the table between them. Its orange light changed when the heir stepped closer. Not brighter. More focused. A thin line of heat reached toward the bandage. Beelzebub moved an instrument into the path. The instrument melted. The heir took a step back. I told you. Hades looked at the wound. What happened? I tried to carry it after the referee returned it. You touched it barehanded. It belongs to my house. That was not the question. The heir's jaw tightened. Yes. Beelzebub looked delighted in the way he only did when something dangerous invalidated a theory. The core is not recognizing bloodline ownership. It is reacting to injury. Adam frowned. Why would Phoenix fire attack a burn? Perhaps it is trying to heal. The heir laughed bitterly. It burned through the first bandage. Badly, Beelzebub said. Healing and harm are not opposites when energy does not understand the target. Hades remembered the pylon exploding in the arena. The Phoenix King had turned to contain the stored fire instead of continuing the fight. Not weakness. Responsibility. Bring your healer. The heir looked suspicious. Why? Because if this core is tied to your family's survival, I am not returning it until we know whether carrying it will injure you again. You have no right to hold it. Hades met his eyes. I have every legal right. I won it. The room cooled. Then Hades pushed the core slightly toward him. I am choosing not to use that answer. The heir stared. He left. He returned with a healer, an older woman whose feathers had gone silver at the tips. She examined the core. Then Adam's hand. Then the bandage. This is old fire, she said. Beelzebub looked offended by the unscientific phrase. She ignored him. Old fire learns houses, not people. It remembers how the family uses it. Hades asked, how does the family use it? Emergency reincarnation, winter heat, barrier ignition. Battle. The healer looked at the air. He looked away. Recently. Beelzebub's eyes sharpened. The core is being trained by deployment. The air bristled. It is a weapon. No, the healer said. It became one because you kept asking. The words quieted the room. They tested the core with 3 targets. A phoenix feather, a damaged ward stone, a bowl of cold water. The fire reacted differently to each. It warmed the feather, mended the ward's broken enchantment badly, but effectively, boiled the water. Then they placed the heir's bandaged hand near it. The fire reached. The healer placed her own hand in the path. The flame split around her. It knows me as someone who repairs, she said. Beelzebub nearly vibrated with irritation and interest. It is conditioned by role association. Old fire learns houses, the healer repeated. That means almost nothing. It means enough for me to use it without losing skin. They argued for 20 minutes. Hades let them. The solution came from Adam. Stop carrying it. Everyone looked at him. If the core is part of the house, put it in the house. Build a place where the family can draw from it without treating it like a trophy. The phoenix heir stared. Our crest hall. The healer nodded slowly. Beelzebub said, with isolation layers. Hades added, and a lending mechanism. The heir looked at him. Lending. You asked for the core back. Beelzebub needs it for 3 days to stabilize the counter. You would still use it. If you agree. The heir looked at the flame. Then at his bandaged hand. What do I receive? Complete test results. If the counter damages the core, my house replaces the lost value. With what? Hades looked toward the mana pool. Mana. The heir laughed once. You negotiate like a merchant. Number merchants usually know what things cost before touching them. They wrote the agreement. 3 days. No invasive alteration. Phoenix healer present during every active test. The family could withdraw the core immediately if it showed permanent destabilization. Beelzebub hated the withdrawal clause. He signed anyway. The heir signed last. Why did you return it after the match? Hades looked at him. You could have kept it legally. Your king protected his spectators. He did. That choice helped me win. The heir's eyes narrowed. You are saying the core was payment? No. Hades looked at the orange light. I am saying I noticed what mattered more to him than victory. The heir was quiet. Before leaving, he touched the fire core through the healer's glove. This time it did not burn him. At the door, he stopped. King Hades. Yes. My father wants a rematch. Adam groaned. The heir almost smiled. I told him to wait until we understand our own fire. Beelzebub looked up from his notes. For once, a sensible royal decision. The air left before the insult could become diplomacy. The fire core remained in the laboratory. Not captured. Borrowed. Beelzebub placed a label beneath it. Phoenix thermal source, conditional loan. Adam added another line. Do not touch while angry. Beelzebub crossed it out. The healer wrote it back in. Chapter 34, Top 25, Zeus. Lord Agars explained his unbeatable strategy for 11 minutes before the match. Adam proved him wrong in 6. He copied the vibration of Agar's time-slowing field and created a narrow path where Hades could move normally. Poseidon pinned the enemy rooks with walls of water. Hades crossed the altered space, shattered the field's anchor, and placed his bident beside Agar's crown. The ranking display changed. Rank threshold crossed, top 25. Reward unlocked, Zeus. Thunder struck the estate courtyard beneath a clear red sky. An elderly man stepped from the smoking crater, stooped and grinning. He looked at Hades, then Poseidon, and threw both arms wide. My brothers, you began a kingdom without inviting me. Poseidon turned away, send him back. Zeus appeared behind him and draped an arm over his shoulders. The courtyard stones cracked under Poseidon's sudden pressure. Hades caught Zeus by the collar before a divine family reunion destroyed the fountain. You will behave in my house. Zeus peered at Adam and Beelzebub. You collect interesting people. Family, Hades corrected. He offered a rook piece. If you accept, their safety becomes your duty. The humor left Zeus eyes long enough to show the god beneath. Anyone who harms my brother's house answers to me. He accepted the piece. Thunder rolled across the valley. When one of the visiting nobles called Hades a pretender wearing a dead god's dignity, Zeus' laughter stopped. For an instant, the old god's body became lean and terrible. Adam set down his fork. Poseidon looked almost pleased. Hades said, Brother. Zeus returned to his foolish grin, but the cracked fountain behind him remained as a warning. At dinner, Zeus flirted with the cook, challenged Poseidon to arm wrestle, and hid 3 official letters beneath his plate. Hades recovered all 3 before dessert. I have ruled for 1 day, Hades said, and already regret this. Zeus raised his cup. Then you are learning to rule. Adam counted the broken roof tiles, while Poseidon announced that the youngest had grown no wiser. Hades looked at his brothers and felt the old nightmare of another history shift, not gone, but challenged by living noise. Chapter 35, The Spoiled Youngest Brother. Zeus escaped his first council, meeting through a window. Hades found him in the training yard entertaining children by letting harmless sparks dance across his knuckles. He looked ridiculous until a visiting noble called the estate a kennel for borrowed gods. Zeus' smile vanished. His body compressed. Muscle replaced frailty, and the air screamed beneath the pressure of his hardened combat form. The noble collapsed before Zeus lifted a hand. Hades stepped between them. Enough. Zeus obeyed at once. Power drained away, leaving the old man rubbing his neck. He insulted you, Zeus said. And now he understands the cost. Hades looked down at the noble. Leave before my brother decides understanding is insufficient. That night, Hades dreamed of a different arena. Poseidon fell. Adam fought until his eyes failed. Unnamed warriors died smiling in arenas Hades had not yet reached. Hades saw himself arrive too late for every brother he had sworn to protect. He woke cold and reached for his bident. Voices carried from the kitchen. Adam was arguing that apples counted as breakfast. Poseidon disagreed. Zeus had apparently set a towel on fire. Beelzebub demanded silence from the laboratory stairs. Hades stood in the doorway and watched them alive beneath the warm lamps. I will keep every one of you, he said. The room quieted. Adam understood first. Zeus looked away, suddenly less interested in the flames. That is a dangerous promise, Poseidon said. I understand. Zeus leaned back against the counter. Then give me a rule. Hades looked at the broken towel. Jokes end when family is threatened. Zeus nodded, and for once did not make the moment smaller with a joke. In the morning he attended the council meeting through the door instead of the window. He still flirted with the clerk, but he stayed until the budget was finished. Zeus kept his promise for almost 12 hours. Then he started a thunderstorm in the bathhouse. Hades arrived to find 3 servants in the corridor, Adam laughing against the wall, and Poseidon standing ankle-deep in water with the expression of a god, deciding whether fratricide counted as household maintenance. Zeus sat in the bath. It was an experiment. No, Beelzebub said from the doorway. Experiments have questions. The question was whether lightning improves hot water. It does not. It was warmer. The roof is missing. Hades looked up. A perfect circular hole showed the red underworld sky. Zeus followed his gaze. Ventilation. Poseidon's trident moved. Hades caught it. No. He has become intolerable. He arrived intolerable. That is not a defense. Adam wiped tears from his eyes. Please do not kill him before the repair estimate. Merek arrived with the estimate. He looked at the roof. Then Zeus. Then the number. He slowly sat down on the nearest bench. Zeus leaned out of the bath. Is it expensive? Merek handed him the paper. The old god stopped smiling. Hades took the trident from Poseidon before the change of expression could be misread as vulnerability. You will repair it. Zeus looked offended. I am a god. You are a rook. That is worse. Today it is a roofer. By noon, half the estate knew. Zeus climbed onto the bathhouse roof with a hammer, 3 bundles of tile, and no idea how mortal construction worked. The mason who had rebuilt the shrine's first wall stood beside him with the exhausted patience of a man who had stopped being impressed by divine rank. Not that nail. Zeus looked at the nail. Why? It splits the tile. I can make another tile. You can use the correct nail. The god of the cosmos stared at him. The mason stared back. Zeus used the correct nail. Children gathered below. That made it worse. Lord Zeus, one called, you put that one crooked. He looked down. The child pointed. It is croaked. Poseidon appeared in the courtyard with perfect timing. Zeus said several things Hades chose not to record. The repair took all day. By sunset, Zeus had stopped performing incompetence and begun asking real questions. He learned how overlapping tiles moved rain away from seams. He learned why the ward lines had to remain separated from conductive metal. He learned that a roof built to survive ordinary weather could fail catastrophically if a god treated it as an extension of his mood. The mason handed him the final tile. Zeus turned it over. People spend this much effort on things no one sees from the ground. Most useful work is like that. The answer quieted him. He placed the tile. That night, Hades found him on the repaired roof alone. No lightning. No jokes. Zeus sat with his knees drawn up, looking over the valley. You dreamed again, he said. Hades stopped. How do you know? You look at us differently afterward. Hades stood beside him. Below, the household windows glowed. Adam was probably in the kitchen. Poseidon was almost certainly pretending not to be in the kitchen. Beelzebub's laboratory lights remained on despite 3 separate orders about sleep. You remember it too, Hades said. Zeus did not ask what it meant. The arena. Hades looked at him. Zeus' face had lost its foolishness. Not everything. Fragments, Father, Kronos, the tournament, my fist-crossing time, Adam standing when he should have fallen. His voice changed on the name. Poseidon not standing at all. Hades' hand tightened. You remember his death. I remember a body that looked like my brother and a crowd that treated grief as a result. The red sky stretched above them. Hades said nothing. Zeus continued. In that memory, you were not there when he fell. No. You blame yourself. Yes. That is stupid. Hades turned. Zeus smiled faintly. Not funny stupid, brother stupid. I know the difference. You were not there. I should have been. Why? Hades did not have an answer that survived saying aloud. Zeus waited. Finally, Hades said, because I was the eldest. Zeus leaned back on his hands. That is not a law. It was mine. Then it was badly written. Hades almost laughed. Zeus looked toward the kitchen lights. You cannot keep every one of us alive. I can try. That is not what you promised. Hades remembered his own words. I will keep every one of you. Zeus continued. Keep does not mean prevent death. Hades' gaze sharpened. Do not. I am serious. That alone made Hades listen. Zeus pointed toward the estate. Adam argues with you. Poseidon ignores rules until he decides they are yours. Beelzebub would dissect the sun if you gave him a clean table. I climbed through a council window because the door bored me. You did not keep us by making us safe. You kept us by making a place where we could be unbearable and still belong. Hades looked away. Zeus' voice softened. If I die defending this, do not turn my death into proof that you failed to own the future. The sentence hurt. Zeus saw it. Good. He did not take it back. Hades sat beside him. For a while they watched workers carry late supplies along the road. Then Hades said, if you die because you start another storm in the bathhouse, I will revive you and kill you myself. Zeus grinned. There he is. Hades looked at the repaired roof. It is still crooked. Zeus looked offended. It is structurally expressive. Poseidon's voice came from below. It is croaked. Zeus leaned over the edge. You were listening. I could hear your stupidity from the dining room. Adam shouted, food. Zeus stood. The serious moment ended because family did not ask permission before becoming ordinary again. Hades followed him down. At the kitchen table, Poseidon had taken the left chair. Adam had taken the right. Beelzebub was reading during dinner. Merek had placed the bathhouse repair bill beside Zeus' plate. Zeus stared at it. Why is this here? Hades sat. Consequences. Everyone laughed except Zeus. Then he did too. Chapter 36. Pressure from Heaven and Hell. Michael's envoy arrived through the front gate, while Cockabeel's message came through the roof as a spear of light. Another impact shook the outer barrier. 6 fallen attackers appeared above the valley. Zeus rose before Hades could finish the order. He met them in the sky laughing until their leader mocked Hades as a counterfeit king. Then the laughter stopped. Zeus entered his hardened form and broke the formation with one punch, driving the leader into the mountain beyond the estate. Hades caught his wrist before the second blow. We need testimony. Zeus exhaled and returned to his older shape. Politics ruins the enjoyable parts. Leora watched the exchange. You controlled him. He chose to stop. I reminded him why. Hades gave heaven the evidence and kept the spearhead. Leora accepted the copies, but did not hide her suspicion. If the next attack comes from heaven itself, then we will distinguish the attacker from the name they borrow. She left through the corrected gate. Zeus stared at the empty sky. You let her threaten us. I let her speak. Adam looked at the burned roof. Can we repair that before another env arrives? Beelzebub picked up the spearhead. No, but I can make the next one regret the angle. Leora did not leave the valley. She reached the outer gate, stopped beneath the repaired arch, and looked back at the spear hole in the roof. Then another light appeared in the sky. Not fallen. Heavenly. 3 angels descended outside the ward. The lead angel wore no combat armor. He carried a sealed white case. Zeus looked upward. Are we fighting these two? No, Hades said. Disappointing. Leora returned to the courtyard. The lead angel bowed. King Hades, I am Sariel, acting under Michael's authority. Hades looked at the case. What is inside? The version of your counter-sigil that heaven improved. Beelzebub appeared so quickly, everyone assumed he had been waiting behind a wall. Sariel opened the case. A white plate rested inside, etched with the room-based counter-design Rel had created. Heaven had changed the geometry. The anchor pattern was smaller, more stable, and keyed to distribute holy pressure into a neutral grounding layer rather than devil architecture. Beelzebub leaned forward. They changed the third junction. Sariel said the third junction was inefficient. It was necessary. It was dangerous. It was both. Tesla was not there yet to turn the disagreement into a second research war. Hades almost regretted that. Almost. Sariel placed a document beside the plate. Michael recognizes the shared origin of the design. Heaven will not claim exclusive authorship. Merek read the credit line. Rel's name remained. So did Leora's. Beelzebub's had been added as originating researcher. He stared at it longer than he should have. Adam noticed. He said nothing. Hades asked, why bring this now? Sariel looked toward the spear, lodged in the damaged roof. Because the fallen attack changed the problem. Cockabeel's faction had sent agents into devil territory, while an envoy from heaven stood inside Hades' gate. If Michael ignored that, every devil house would be able to claim heaven tolerated the attack. If heaven moves openly, Sariel said, Cockabeel will call it civil war. If heaven does nothing, he learns the cost of attacking me is paperwork. Sariel's face tightened. Yes. Hades looked at Leora. What do you want? She answered. A joint inspection of the attack site. Zeus groaned. No battle. Leora looked at the mountain, where he had punched the fallen leader. There has already been enough battle to make the inspection difficult. That sounds like praise. It is not. They began at the roof. Beelzebub examined the spearhead. Leora identified the holy forging technique. Sariel identified the angelic script beneath the fallen alterations. The weapon had been built from a legitimate heaven design, stolen years earlier, modified to carry a contract hook. Hades asked, what does the hook do? Beelzebub answered, it makes the first person to remove the spear from the structure count as accepting custody. Merek went pale. If we had pulled it out, the house would have acknowledged responsibility for the weapon. Leora stared at the spear. Cockabeel wanted the attack to become your possession. Hades almost admired the structure. Almost. Leave it. Sariel looked at him. In your roof. Until the record is complete. The servants were less impressed. Rain was expected the next day. The mason arrived, carrying a bucket. You are all very important, he said, looking at gods, angels, scientists, and a king. The kitchen is still going to flood. Hades looked at the spear. Then at the hole. Build around it. The mason blinked. What? A temporary cover. The weapon remains untouched. He thought. Then nodded. Within an hour, workers had built a raised wooden shelter over the spear. It looked ridiculous. It also kept rain out. Zeus walked around it. You made a roof over the roof. The mason said, you made the first hole. Zeus left. The joint inspection moved to the mountain impact site. The fallen leader was gone, but his blood remained on the stone where Zeus had driven him into it. Leora crouched beside the crater. The blood has a relay mark. Beelzebub looked. The mark activated when exposed. A voice came through. Cockabeel. How touching, heaven and hell sharing a crime scene. Zeus smiled. Hades raised one hand. No one attacked the blood. Cockabeel continued. You think Michael's leash makes you legitimate, Hades? I do not wear Michael's leash. Then why let his servants walk your land? Because they knocked. Leora almost smiled. The relay flared. Kneel to one side eventually. Everyone does. Hades looked at the blood mark. No. One word. No threat. No speech. The relay remained open, as though waiting for more. Hades gave it nothing. Cockabeel cut the connection first. Sariel looked at him. You could have used the relay to trace him. Beelzebub said, not safely. Sariel turned. You knew. Yes. Why did you not say? Because I wanted to see whether Hades would reach for the obvious answer. Hades looked at him. Beelzebub did not apologize. Adam laughed. The inspection ended at sunset. Heaven took copies of the evidence. Hades kept copies. The spear remained in the roof beneath its absurd wooden cover until the registry certified every measurement. Only then did Leora remove it. No contract activated. The next morning, the mason repaired the hole. Sariel left the improved counterplate behind. Gift, Adam asked. Shared prototype, Sariel said. That sounds like a gift wearing armor. Leora looked at Hades. If Cockabeel attacks again, Michael will not pretend not to see it. Hades nodded. If Michael attacks. Sariel's expression tightened. Leora answered. Then you will have evidence that we chose differently first. That was enough. The angels departed. Zeus watched them rise. Can we fight someone now? Poseidon walked past. You fought yesterday. That was hours ago. Hades returned to the council room. Politics, he thought, did ruin some of the enjoyable parts. It also left fewer bodies under them. For now, that was a trade worth making. Chapter 37, The Arena of Hades. The top 10 qualification took place in a stadium built over a dimensional void. The first clash split the platform. Holy power bit through Hades' sleeve. Hades smiled despite the cut. At last, he said, an attack worth respecting. You cannot pass, Bediva said. The blade stretched across the arena. Hades struck it away and stopped the bident at his throat. A vow is only as wise as the man who words it. Bediva looked at the changed field. You did not break the promise. I respected it. That is worse. After the match, Bediva asked to see the recording. Hades showed him the exact moment he had stepped back and the sigil had turned the platform. A lesser king would have cut through the vow, Bediva said. A lesser king would have learned less. Bediva returned the holy blade to its sheath. The next opponents will not announce their limits. Then we will make them reveal them by choosing. In the estate, Adam repaired the cut in Hades' sleeve while Zeus tried to imitate Bediva's solemn voice. Hades let the joke continue until Beelzebub brought the next ranking file. The top 10 was no longer a distant number. It was a door guarded by abilities that punished certainty. Bediva's blade did not simply extend. It declared distance. The first time Hades stepped toward him, the holy edge lengthened until the gap between them became exactly the range Bediva needed. The second time Hades retreated, the blade shortened without losing pressure. The vow was not, no one may pass. It was, the defender's reach will always be enough to hold this line. Hades understood on the third exchange. Bediva saw understanding arrive. Now you know. Partly. Hades rotated the bident. The arena stood over a dimensional void. 6 platforms moved around a central bridge. The objective seal lay behind Bediva, but reaching it required crossing the line he had vowed to hold. Adam watched from a side platform. Poseidon controlled the outer lanes. Zeus had been assigned the simple instruction not to destroy the arena. He complained continuously. Beelzebub monitored the vow from the support booth. It is conceptual, he said through the communication spell. Do not contest the distance directly. Bediva attacked. Hades blocked. The holy blade bit through the bident's outer aura and cut his sleeve. A thin line of blood appeared. The crowd erupted. Hades looked at it. Bediva did not smile. Good. He was not Kaito. The injury did not become performance. Again, Hades said. Bediva stepped. Hades changed angle. The blade followed. He tested upward. It followed. Low. It followed. Behind. Bediva's body turned with the vow before thought could slow him. Perfect defense. Almost. Hades stopped attacking the line. He attacked the platform. The bident struck stone. Bediva moved back automatically to protect footing. The line moved with him. Hades saw it. The vow belongs to you. Bediva's eyes narrowed. Of course. No, it belongs to where you believe you are standing. Hades struck again. Not harder. Precisely. The platform rotated under Bediva. The knight stepped to compensate. His line turned. For one breath, the objective seal was no longer behind him. It was beside him. Hades moved. The blade crossed his path. He stopped before contact. Bediva froze. The vow had defended the old line, not the new orientation. Hades could pass. He did not. Instead, he touched the bident to Bediva's shoulder. Your promise is still intact. Bediva looked toward the objective. Then at the rotated platform. You changed the field. I changed what the word line meant. That is legal. Yes. I dislike it. Also legal. The crowd laughed. Bediva did not. Then he did, once. The match continued. Because the objective seal still had to be claimed under active opposition. Bediva changed his stance. No longer guarding the bridge. Guarding Hades. That made the vow more dangerous. Beelzebub's voice sharpened. He adapted the subject. I noticed. Now the blade declared reach around Hades himself. Every movement became contested. Hades finally smiled. Better. Bediva attacked. The next minute became the best fight Hades had experienced since waking in the underworld. Not because Bediva could overpower him. He could not. Because every easy answer strengthened the vow. Hades used the bident shaft, not the point. He let Bediva drive him toward a smaller platform. He gave ground until the holy blade believed the boundary had become stable. Then Adam moved. Not into the fight. Toward the objective. Bediva's head turned. The vow reacted. 2 subjects. 1 promise. The conceptual field split. Bediva realized too late. You used your queen. Adam chose the opening. Adam touched the objective seal. The match bell rang. Bediva lowered the sword. You could have ordered him earlier. Yes. Why wait? I wanted to know whether the vow could adapt. Bediva looked at the cut on Hades' sleeve. You paid blood for curiosity. Very little. That is how fools describe blood before they run out. The line stayed with Hades. After the match, Bediva requested the recording. They watched it